The final days of war. The year was 1945. World War II had raged for 6 long, bloody years. Nazi Germany had fallen. Hitler was dead. Europe was free again. But in the Pacific, the war was far from over. Japan, though beaten, surrounded, and starving, refused to surrender. For the soldiers of America, every island they captured from Japan came at an unimaginable cost. From Iwo Jima to Okinawa, every victory was soaked in blood. Japan's code was clear: death before dishonor. To American generals, this meant one thing: invading Japan could cost millions of lives. The Japanese willed to fight. In the cities of Japan, people were hungry. Bombings had turned Tokyo into ashes. But still, the emperor's voice had not spoken the word surrender. Even as the enemy closed in, Japanese soldiers were preparing for the ultimate defense, Operation Ketsugo, the decisive battle. Civilians were being trained to fight with bamboo spears. Old men, women, even children were ready to die for the emperor. American intelligence estimated that a land invasion, called Operation Downfall, would cost at least 500,000 American lives and possibly 10 times more Japanese lives. It was a nightmare no one wanted to face. The Manhattan Project, America's deadly secret. While the world burned in the deserts of New Mexico, a different kind of fire was being born. Scientists under a secret program known as the Manhattan Project were creating a weapon unlike any before. A bomb that could destroy an entire city in seconds, led by physicist J. Robert Oppenheimer, and funded by the U.S. government with $2 billion. The project was a race against time. Would this weapon end the war, or destroy humanity itself? On July 16, 1945, the first atomic bomb was tested in the New Mexico desert. The explosion lit up the sky like a new dawn. Oppenheimer whispered words from the ancient Bhagavad Gita: "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." America had just unlocked the power of the sun, and the decision of how to use it was now in the hands of President Harry S. Truman. Truman's dilemma. Truman had been president for only a few months. The death of Franklin D. Roosevelt had placed an unimaginable burden on his shoulders. Now generals and advisors stood before him with a chilling question. Should America use the atomic bomb to end the war? Some argued that Japan must be warned first, given a chance to surrender. Others, like Secretary of War Henry Stimson and General Leslie Groves, believed only the shock of total destruction would force Japan's hand. Truman faced 2 choices: invade Japan and lose hundreds of thousands of soldiers, or use a single bomb and end the war instantly. The Potsdam Declaration. In July 1945, the Allied powers, the United States, Britain, and China, issued the Potsdam Declaration, demanding Japan's unconditional surrender. It warned, surrender now or face prompt and utter destruction. But Japan's government refused. They believed America was bluffing. After all, no one had ever seen such a weapon before. The war cabinet in Tokyo decided to fight on, hoping the Soviet Union might help them negotiate peace. But they didn't know. The Soviets were secretly preparing to declare war on Japan. Hiroshima, the first target. On August 6, 1945, a B-29 bomber named Enola Gay took off from Tinian Island. Its mission: to drop a single bomb over the city of Hiroshima. At 8:15 a.m., the bomb, nicknamed Little Boy, exploded 1,900 feet above the city. In less than a second, 80,000 people were vaporized. The temperature reached 4,000 degrees. Buildings, bodies, and dreams, everything turned to ash. A blinding flash was followed by a silent scream that echoed across history. The world reacts. News of Hiroshima stunned the world. Even the scientists who built the bomb were horrified. Oppenheimer said, "The physicists have known sin." But Japan still did not surrender. The military leaders believed America could not possibly have more than one bomb. They were wrong. The second bomb. On August 9, 1945, another B-29 bomber, Boxcar, flew toward Nagasaki. The bomb it carried was called Fat Man. At 11:02 a.m., the city vanished beneath a mushroom cloud. More than 40,000 people died instantly, and tens of thousands more in the weeks to come. This time, even the Japanese emperor knew the end had come. For the first time in Japanese history, Emperor Hirohito spoke directly to his people. In a calm, broken voice, he said, "We must endure the unendurable and suffer what must be suffered." Japan would surrender. The war was finally over. The hidden motives. Officially, America said the bomb was used to save lives, to end the war quickly. But historians later debated deeper motives. Was it also a warning to the Soviet Union, showing America's new power? Was it a message to the world that the U.S. now controlled the future of war? Perhaps both were true. The atomic bomb ended one war, but started another. The Cold War. The human cost. In the months after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the world saw horror beyond imagination. People died not just from burns, but from radiation sickness, unknown till then. Children were born with deformities. Survivors, called hibakusha, lived with scars both physical and emotional for decades. The bomb had ended a war, but it had also changed humanity forever. After the fire, the ruins of Hiroshima. When the fires finally died, Hiroshima was silent. No birds, no footsteps, only smoke rising from the skeleton of a city. Survivors wandered half naked, their skin burned, hanging from their bodies like torn paper. They called it Pikadon, the flash and the boom. Doctors and nurses who survived rushed to help others, but hospitals were gone. Water was poisoned. Medicine was gone. Children searched the ashes for their mothers. Some found only shadows, burned into the walls where people once stood. In the first 24 hours, tens of thousands more died, and still no one knew what kind of weapon had done this. Nagasaki's tragic echo. 3 days later, Nagasaki became the next chapter of sorrow. The bomb missed its original target by a few kilometers, but the destruction was still absolute. The Urakami Valley, once filled with churches and schools, turned into a sea of flames. A survivor named Shigeko, only 15 years old, remembered. The sky turned red, and people ran without eyes, without voices. The world had ended. The human body had never faced such heat, such radiation. The bombs did not just destroy, they rewrote the definition of death. The dawn of the nuclear age. With Japan's surrender, the world entered the nuclear age. Nations began building their own bombs. Fear became the new weapon. The same science that promised peace now held the power to destroy the planet. Oppenheimer's words haunted the world. The secret celebration? While Japan burned, America celebrated. In Washington, news of Hiroshima was met with relief, and even cheers. President Truman announced, "We have used it in order to shorten the agony of war." But in the halls of science, the mood was dark. Oppenheimer walked into the Oval Office and said, "Mr. President, I feel I have blood on my hands." Truman, frustrated, replied coldly, "Don't you worry about that. The blood is on mine." The age of innocence in science was over. The Soviet shock. Only a day after Nagasaki, the Soviet Union declared war on Japan, invading Manchuria with over 1 million troops. This move crushed Japan's final hope of peace through negotiation. Historians later argued, even if America hadn't dropped the bombs, Japan might have surrendered soon after the Soviet invasion. But Truman had another thought. If the Soviets joined the fight, they might also claim part of Japan after the war. By dropping the bombs before the Soviets could advance, America ensured Japan's surrender to the United States, not to Stalin. The bombs were not only the end of one war, they were the beginning of a new power struggle, the Age of Fear. When the war ended, the world rejoiced, but the peace felt different. In 1949, the Soviet Union tested its own atomic bomb. By the 1950s, both superpowers held enough nuclear fire to destroy the planet many times over. Children in schools learned to hide under desks. Families built bomb shelters in their basements. Humanity had entered an age where one mistake could mean extinction. This new fear had a name, the Cold War, and Hiroshima became its eternal warning, the survivor's message. Decades later, the survivors, the hibakusha, began to speak. They told their stories not for revenge, but for remembrance. One survivor said, "We are not angry. We are only sad that the world still does not understand." Every August 6th, Hiroshima falls silent at 8:15 a.m. Bells ring, flowers float down the river, and the city whispers to the world, "Never again." The scars remain, on the land, on the people, and on the conscience of humanity. The trials of justice. In the months after Japan's surrender, the victors built courtrooms among the ruins. From 1946 to 1948, the Tokyo War Crimes Tribunal tried the leaders who had driven Asia into chaos. Generals and ministers stood before the judges of 11 nations. They were accused of murder, torture, and crimes against humanity. Yet one man was absent from the defendant's bench, Emperor Hirohito. The Americans decided to spare him, believing Japan needed a symbol to hold it together. Some called it mercy. Others called it politics. As the judges read the verdicts, the ghosts of Hiroshima listened in silence. Justice had arrived, but too late for the dead. 1. The rebirth of Japan. Under American occupation, a new Japan began to rise. General Douglas MacArthur oversaw sweeping reforms. A new constitution, women's voting rights, and a ban on war itself. Factories that once built bombers now built bicycles, then cars, then dreams. From ashes grew neon. By the 1960s, Japan had transformed from ruin to miracle, the economic phoenix of Asia. But even as skyscrapers climbed higher, survivors in Hiroshima still met each August to remember the day the sky fell. The American conscience. Across the ocean, the United States faced its own reflection. Scientists who once cheered the Manhattan Project now led peace movements. Oppenheimer lost his security clearance after warning against new nuclear weapons. He told a crowd in 1953, "The physicists' responsibilities extend to the ends of the earth." American textbooks praised victory, but photographs from Hiroshima crept into classrooms. Children asked, could it happen again? And their teachers had no easy answer. Echoes through time. In later decades, nuclear fear shaped every generation. From the Cuban Missile Crisis to Chernobyl, the shadow of 1945 followed humankind. Artists painted mushroom clouds. Poets wrote of fire raining from heaven. When the Cold War ended in 1991, people hoped the danger had died. But the weapons remained, smaller, faster, and smarter. A single submarine could now destroy an entire continent. The bombs of Hiroshima and Nagasaki had become blueprints for the future. The eternal question. 80 years later, Hiroshima's Peace Memorial still stands, a skeleton of stone against a skyline of glass. Tourists walk quietly through the museum, reading letters burned at the edges. Children fold paper cranes for peace. A plaque bears these words. This is our cry, this is our prayer, to build peace in the world. The story of why America used the nuclear weapon is not just history, it's a mirror. It asks every nation, every generation, if you held such power in your hands, what would you do? The atomic age began with the promise of peace and the threat of annihilation. From the deserts of New Mexico to the cities of Japan, mankind discovered its own fragility. The lesson remains simple yet impossible. Power can end wars, but only compassion can end fear.